Hi there everybody, and welcome back to lesson 40 of the Dead Earth game development series brought to you by the Game Institute. I'm Gary Simmons, and in this lesson we're not going to do any coding at all. Instead, we're going to see what's involved in taking some of those other zombie models that we've imported into our project and how to, as quickly as possible, set those zombies up like Jill so that we can have lots of different zombies walking around our level, following different waypoint networks, having different animations and with different characteristics. Now, the reason I've decided to dedicate a lesson to this is that Zombie Jill as a construct has been getting built up over a series of 40 lessons, and she is now a very complex object. It has a hierarchy, and on that hierarchy we have ragdolls and configurable joints. We have child objects such as the meshes of Jill herself. We have a sensor trigger, which itself has a collider and a sensor script, and we also have the target trigger as well, which is used for setting her target to either waypoints or any target she might be tracking, like an audio aggravator or a visual aggravator. Furthermore, if we remember on our actual hierarchy itself, we also had to set up these damage triggers on the hands and on the mouth. And of course, on the AI entity game objects itself, which remember really is the object that is Jill, this Omni Zombie Jill game object is really just a container that doesn't actually move around the level when Jill moves. It's just a nice little place for us to keep all of the things that are related to Jill under a single game object in the hierarchy to keep our hierarchy clean. But the actual Jill game object is really this child object called the AI entity, and it's on this game object that we have the animator set up, the rigid body, we have the nav mesh agent with all of its properties, we have the capsule collider of course, which is used to perform collisions, and we also have all of our AI state machine states, and of course the AI zombie state machine itself. And obviously all of these things take quite a long time to set up with a lot of settings, and if we had to build up every zombie from scratch each time by adding all of these scripts to all of the child game objects and configuring all of those settings, then setting up each new zombie that we bring into our level would be a complete pain in the ass. So what I'm going to do is show you what I did in Dead Earth so that I could streamline that to a certain extent. Now, I'm not going to lie, setting up new zombies is still a pain in the ass, but it means that, for example, if we look at the AI entity game object with all of these scripts, we're not going to have to set all of this up again from scratch. We're going to make a copy of Jill, and then we're going to swap out her bone hierarchy and her meshes for a different bone hierarchy and a different mesh that uses that bone hierarchy. And then what we've basically got is a template then of Jill's AI state machine and her states, and we can tweak those to provide different behaviors. And of course we can also assign a different controller to that zombie's animator that has different motion fields, so it can use different animations for running, walking and turning. Of course, one of the things that we're not going to be able to avoid is that more often than not, as you bring in different models, they're going to use completely different bone hierarchies. They'll be laid out differently, or at the very least they're going to have different names given to the bones. So this basically means that in most cases we're going to have to replace the bone hierarchy, and when we replace the bone hierarchy, of course, we're going to lose everything that we've added to Jill's bone hierarchy, which, if you remember, on all of her joints she has things like character joints and rigid bodies, all that was set up using the ragdoll wizard. That's not so much of a problem. When we replace the bone hierarchy with the bone hierarchy of another mesh, what we can do is use the ragdoll wizard to sort of set all of that up again. But you'll also remember that when we used the ragdoll wizard, it didn't always get everything exactly right. We had to go in and tweak some of those character joint axes, and we also had to re-add things such as the damage triggers to the hand and the mouth. And we're going to have to do all of those things for each zombie that we wish to set up in our level. But it does basically mean that we won't have to set up all of this stuff on the AI entity game object, and that's pretty cool because there's quite a lot to that. And we won't have to set up the sensor trigger or the target trigger. So the basic thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of Zombie Jill. We're going to leave her AI entity intact, and we're going to substitute in the new bone hierarchy here called hips and the new meshes used by that new zombie into this structure, and then swap over things such as the avatar that's being used. But before we do that, what I want to do is I want to prefab Jill. So just to make sure everything's nice and tidy, I'm going to select Jill's AI entity game object, and I'm just going to make sure that I reset her transforms so that she's perfectly parented to that container game object. And then I'll just move that up a little bit so her feet are now on the ground. I like to do that just so that when we're placing the zombies in the level and we're moving around this top level object, we are actually, sort of moving the zombie, and it just makes it very easy. If we want to see where Zombie Jill is, we can just double click on that, Okay, that was a bad example because she's got that massive trigger, but you know what I mean, it'll take you to the place where the zombie is. So with the AI entity now reset, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a prefab from her, and I'm going to do that by first of all locating my prefabs folder. It's currently empty. I'm going to right click and create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder zombies. I'm then going to open that up and I'm going to drag over Omni Zombie Jill and drop her into that prefabs folder. Now that we have her in our scene, I'm going to duplicate her. So I'm going to right click on Omni Zombie Jill in the hierarchy. I'm going to choose duplicate. I'm then going to turn off our original Omni Zombie Jill, so we're now looking at the new copy. I'm then going to rename this one Omni Zombie Butcher. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to break the prefab connection. I don't want to make any changes to this zombie, accidentally hit apply and then reflect all those changes back to our Zombie Jill prefab. So I'm going to go to the game object menu with Omni Zombie Butcher selected, and I'm going to choose break prefab instance, and you can see it's no longer blue in the hierarchy, which means it's now an independent object, not really related in any way to the original prefab from which it came. Okay, so this is all fine. We don't need to do anything to this Omni Zombie. Oh, I called it Butler. That should be Butcher, shouldn't it? There you go. But what I want to do is I want to open up the AI entity game object. All of this stuff can pretty much stay as it is. We're going to use all of the settings currently given to Jill to be the default settings for our new zombie. And then of course we can change them afterwards. But this provides us with a really solid base of a zombie that we already know works quite well. So what we want to do is get rid of the hips. And we want to get rid of the meshes. And we want to replace them with another zombie, another FBX file that we've imported into our project. So let's drill down into our models folder. And I'm going to drill down into my Mixamo characters folder, and I'm going to select Mortimer. This is the guy I call the Butcher. Now don't worry at the moment about how rubbish all of these materials look on the zombies, right? We're not concentrating on that in any way whatsoever. This is all about coding and setting up our AI system. We can do all of the tweaking of the materials, giving them proper PBR materials with metal maps and things like that much further down the road when we actually have the figures in the actual levels that we're going to be using in the game. So I'm going to drag Mortimer into the scene, and what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to open up Mortimer's hierarchy, and you'll see that if I open up Mortimer's hierarchy and I open up Jill's hierarchy, what we have at the top of Mortimer is pretty much an empty game object, but it just has this animator on it. This object can really be thought of as Jill's AI entity game object in how it relates to this hierarchy that's underneath it. You can see if we imagine this Mortimer game object was called AI entity, then under the AI entity we would have the hips and we would have the meshes. And if we look at Zombie Jill, under the AI entity we have the hips and we have the meshes. So this is the thing really that we wish to become the new AI entity game object for our new Omni Zombie Butcher. So what I'm going to do to make sure that our Butcher is put in the exact same position as Zombie Jill's AI entity is I'm going to drag Mortimer over and I'm going to make it a child of Omni Zombie Butcher, like so. And then what I'm going to do is reset the Mortimer game object to 0, so that the Butcher is now in exact same position as Zombie Jill. Just to be clear, what I'm doing here is I'm moving the Mortimer game object, which contains the hips and the meshes of the Butcher, to exactly the same position as the original AI entity game object, which currently contains Jill's hips and Jill's meshes. So we're just making sure now that they are both aligned. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete Jill's hips and Jill's meshes, like so. Then I'm going to take Mortimer's hips and Mortimer's meshes, now that we know they're all in the same position that Jill's hips and meshes were, and I'm going to unparent them from Mortimer, and I'm going to make them children of the AI entity game object. And it's going to ask me if I want to break the prefab instance. It's talking about Mortimer here, there's no problem, that's what we want to do. At this point, I can completely get rid of the Mortimer game object. It's no longer needed because our AI entity game object, of course, does have the animator on it, as well as all of that other cool stuff. Now don't worry about all of these little warnings here. It's just telling me that there's certain problems with certain transforms, but it doesn't actually mean anything. The zombie still works absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Mortimer again, and just remember what the avatar is called. It's called Mortimer 2 Avatar. Now obviously if you haven't followed along exactly with me and you don't have an avatar for Mortimer, it means that you haven't taken Mortimer and gone through the process of humanoid retargeting him. So to do that, you need to select Mortimer, and in the import inspector, select rig and make sure you set the animation type to humanoid, okay? And you should have a little tick there. There shouldn't be any problem with it. And then you just click apply, and then a Mortimer avatar will automatically be connected. Now, you might not have exactly the same name as me. You might not have Mortimer 2, you might just have Mortimer, in which case the avatar is just going to be called Mortimer Avatar, not Mortimer 2 Avatar. I think I have that there because when I was doing a dry run of this lesson, or one of the earlier lessons, I probably imported the Mortimer model twice, and that's why I've got some of these twos. But it doesn't matter, as long as you've got an avatar, everything is fine. So the first thing we need to do is select the Butcher's AI entity, and we need to change the avatar, not to use Jill's avatar, but to use Mortimer's avatar. So let me type in Mort. There's Mortimer 2 avatar, and all is pretty good. Now we can delete the original Mortimer game object. Now, although our zombie is not a full functioning zombie yet, I'm pretty sure that because we've now assigned it the correct avatar and the hips and the meshes, we should see the Butcher animate. There you go, just like Jill did. So that's pretty cool. But you'll notice that if he comes at me in a minute and I shoot him, I can't shoot him because we haven't set up its ragdoll. It has no colliders on its body parts, and that's the thing, unfortunately, we do have to do manually. But as it stands at the moment, we have quite quickly copied over into a brand new zombie not only the bones and meshes, but we have all of the zombie state machine and the nav agent settings all set up for this zombie exactly as they were for Jill. Now, before I go on, let me just tell you one very quick shortcut you can make if you're using zombies or models that all use the same bone hierarchy. Because if that is the case, you do not even have to delete and swap out the hips. You just have to replace the meshes, which basically means if you were, for example, using something like Dash Studio or Fuse, I think it's true with Mixamo Fuse as well, that all of the zombies or the models that you export from that will all use the same bone hierarchy, which means that you don't have to delete the hips. You literally just have to drag the meshes over and everything will be ready to go. The hips will obviously stay intact, so they'll still have all of their rigid bodies on, all of their ragdoll joints on, and all of their damage triggers on. But as I'm assuming that most of you will probably be sourcing your zombie assets from lots of different vendors, they're probably all going to have different bone hierarchies, and you are going to have to remove the hips and swap in the hips as well. And of course, when we replace the bone hierarchy, we have to reset up that bone hierarchy for ragdoll and for our various different damage triggers. Also, because we've swapped out the hips to the ones that were originally there, if we select the Butcher's AI entity game object, you'll see that in our AI zombie state machine, we've now lost a reference to the root bone, the hip bone. So we're just going to need to make that connection once again. And you'll remember this is used so that we know how to reanimate the zombie. We know where the hip bone is and the axis alignment. Oh, and something else as well, if I go to the feeding state on our new zombie, you'll see that we've now lost the mount where we wish the blood particles to emit from when it's feeding. And of course, that's because that is also something that we added to Jill's original bone hierarchies. So we're going to have to re-add that to the new bone hierarchy. So without further ado, I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the ragdoll for our Butcher. Make sure that he's got colliders on all his body parts, that they are all originally kinematic rigid bodies when the level starts so that they don't interfere with the animation and they don't try to be controlled by the physics system, and just make sure that all of those body parts are on the correct layer. And at that point, we should be in a place where we can at least shoot the zombie, see it ragdoll, and reanimate. Fortunately, we've already discovered that setting up a ragdoll is quite simple because Unity has the ragdoll wizard to assist in this. So if I go to the game object menu, I go to the 3D object menu and I choose ragdoll, that's going to bring up the ragdoll wizard, and now all we have to do is open up the hierarchy of our new Butcher and just assign all of the bones to the relevant slots in the ragdoll wizard. So we know that the pelvis is the hip bone. We know that for left hips, that's the left upper leg. And we know that for the left knee, that's the left lower leg. We don't do anything with the feet. And we're going to do the same for the right leg as well. So the right hips is our right. Oh, sorry, there is a slot for the feet. Let me change that over. So I'll assign left foot there as well. Let me open up these hierarchies completely so I can see what they're doing. So we've assigned the right hips. Let's now assign the right leg to the right knee and the right foot to the right foot. Now we're going to assign the left arm and the left elbow, which is the upper arm and the lower arm. So let me close down the left leg and the right leg sub-hierarchies, drill down into the various spine bones. We don't assign the shoulder. What we assign is left arm and left forearm. That's basically kind of upper arm and lower arm. So for the left arm, we will assign left arm, and for the left elbow, we will assign left forearm, and we'll do the same for the right arm. So right arm goes to right arm, right forearm goes to right elbow. And it wants to know what the middle spine is. So that's going to be, we've got spine 1 and spine 2. So that's spine 1, isn't it? And finally, we need to find the head, because we also want to have a collider on the head when it's being ragdolled. So we're going to drill down into neck 1, and there you can see the head. And we'll assign that like so. And all I should have to do now is just press create, and we should have our butcher ragdolled. Now don't worry if some of this stuff isn't showing up. Like for example, it doesn't look like I've got anything on my legs, but that's because I think we have yeah, you can see that if you drill down into the leg hierarchy, the capsule collider is folded up, so that means we can't see it in the scene view. So if you want to just make sure everything's definitely working correctly, you just want to make sure that those colliders on the various game objects are definitely unfolded, so we see their wireframe hulls in the scene view. I'll just check the head. Okay, so if I select the hips now, I should see all of the various things that we need to make this a ragdoll. Now you will recall when we added the ragdoll functionality to ZombieJill originally, we saw that the primary axis was actually wrong on the elbow joint, so we're going to need to fix those again. So that is I think it's actually the elbow joint that we need to fix, or in our case the left forearm. So with the butcher's left forearm selected, these things are so hard to see. I think if I remember rightly, we need to set Z to -1, and we need to set the x-axis to 0. And you can now see that the orange arrow is pointing right up in the air in exactly the same way that the upper arm is. And of course we need to do the same fix to the right forearm. So I'm going to drill down into the right forearm. Once again, set the x component of the primary axis to 0 and the z component to -1 in this particular case, I guess, right? Is that what I did last time? Yeah, -1. Okay, so if I select all of the bones now by selecting the hips game object, you can see that all of the arrows now are facing the right way, so that the primary axis is the axis that we have the ability to configure the joint on, which of course the ragdoll wizard will have done for us automatically. But what we need to do is we need to resize the colliders so that it correctly hugs the body a little bit more closely. Now there's a myriad of different ways that you can do this. It depends what you find quicker. One of the things that you might want to do is just as we did with ZombieJill, go through, select each of the colliders, and then change their radius and height like so. But the other thing you can do, of course, is because we know that this is pretty much the same size as ZombieJill, we can just go to ZombieJill and we can just drill through her bone hierarchy, select each collider. So I'm starting with the hips here, just do copy component and then go down into the hips of our butcher here and then paste the component values like so. And that's actually the way I'm going to do it. I just want to make sure that I set this butcher up with the exact same ragdoll that ZombieJill was set up with. So I don't really need to show you me doing this, but I probably will anyway, and I'll just put it on some kind of time-lapse thing so it happens at like 4 times the speed. But just to remind you, if I move down now, for example, onto the left leg, I go up to ZombieJill's left leg, go down to a capsule collider, from the little cog choose copy component, and then go down to our butcher's left leg and then do paste component on the capsule collider like so. Actually, paste component values is very important. I'll do one more for you and then I'll speed this thing up so you're not there painfully watching me go through all this. So once again, I've now selected Jill's lower leg. I'm going to scroll down to a capsule collider, copy component, scroll down to our butcher's lower left leg, and then on the capsule collider component, choose paste component values. And you can see now this is looking much more like Zombie Jill's legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this now for all of the colliders that make up the Butcher's Ragdoll, but I'm going to speed up the video while I'm doing this, so you don't have to painstakingly watch me do this in real time. And the bounds of our ragdoll are now correctly set up, identical to how they were with Jill. So what we need to do now, and you may have forgotten about some of these steps, so it's good that we're going through it again, is we need to visit each of these colliders that form the ragdoll. We need to assign them to the correct layer, which is the AI body part layer. And for the head, we need to assign it the head tag. For the upper body parts, we need to assign it the upper body tag. And for the legs, we need to assign them the lower body tag. Also, while we're doing this, we need to make sure that all of these colliders start off as kinematic rigid bodies instead of non-kinematic rigid bodies, which they are at the moment. And this is really important because if they're not kinematic, it basically means that the physics system will be fighting with the animation system to control the body parts of Jill. And we only want the physics system to start influencing these body parts once the animator has stopped and we are now in ragdoll mode. So let's first of all select the legs that have our body parts on them. So that's the left upper leg, the left lower leg, the right upper leg, and the right lower leg. And let's make sure that we click the Is Kinematic tick box on for these rigid bodies so they become kinematic. We assign them the AI body part layer, and we'll click yes to assign this to all of their children as well. And we'll also assign them the lower body tag. Next up, I'm going to select the upper body parts, excluding the head. So I'm going to select the hips, spine 1, the left arm and the left forearm, the right arm and the right forearm, and we're going to assign those to the AI body part layer. We're going to tag them as being upper body, and we're going to make sure that their rigid bodies are all set to be kinematic at startup. So the only body we have left to visit is the head itself, this little puppy here. So this needs to once again be assigned the AI body part layer, which it has already because we did that under the hips, I believe. But if it wasn't assigned, make sure you assign it to the AI body part layer. Then select the tag and choose head. And if it's not already set, just make sure the Is Kinematic tick box is set to true on its rigid body. So what we have now, if I'm not mistaken, and bear in mind I may be, is if I press play now, this should work very much like Jill in so far that I should be able to shoot him. And yeah, you can see I can shoot him, and if I shoot him in the head, he goes down, and he should be able to reanimate as well. Well, he won't reanimate because I've just shot him in the head, so he's dead. But let me just try that again by maximizing the window. You see, at the moment, this zombie is behaving kind of exactly the same as Jill, so I'll shoot him in the legs. He goes down, and he should actually reanimate. Yeah. So all the basic stuff now works. But of course, what this zombie hasn't got on it at the moment, you can see I've damaged its leg, so it's now limping towards me. What it doesn't have on it at the moment are the damage triggers on the hands and on the mouth. It also doesn't have a mount where when it's feeding, either on me or on another body on the ground, that the blood particles can be emitted from. So we're going to need to add those to its hierarchy now. So let's start with the mouth trigger and the blood particles mount, which if I go up to Zombie Jill, I am reminded is actually a child of her head. If I open up Jill's head and scroll down, you'll see towards the bottom we have two game objects. One is called the mouth trigger, which has a capsule collider on it. It has a damage trigger on it, and it has a transform on it. And we also have the blood particle mount, which is literally just a transform that's used to tell the blood system where to emit the particles from. So what I'm going to do, rather than create all of these game objects with all their scripts and colliders on from scratch in our butcher, I'm going to duplicate them in Jill's hierarchy, copy them over, and then copy over the components, much like I did just now. In fact, the only component I really need to copy over, I think, is just going to be the transform. So to make sure that when we move the mouth trigger, it's not still relative to Jill, but it's relative to our butcher, because I can't remember offhand whether I've actually moved the butcher from Jill's original position. So I'm going to right click on the mouth trigger, and I'm going to click duplicate, and then I'm going to right click on the blood particle mount, and I'm going to click duplicate. I'm going to create those two duplicates, and I'm going to drag them down and connect them to our butcher's head, like so. And you can see the transform looks a little bit funky on that, but I do actually think it's perfectly fine. We're just seeing kind of floating point precision there because I've done a copy of it. But if you're in any doubt, just select the mouth trigger in Zombie Jill, copy over the transform component, and then we can go down into the mouth trigger on our butcher, and we can just paste that in. But I'm pretty sure that's the same thing. Paste component values. Actually, no, it wasn't right. It did get a bit of scaling applied to it. So now it's as it should be, and I'll just take that one off the end. I'll rename it and just call it mouth trigger instead of mouth trigger 1. I'll do the same for the blood particle mount, and I'll also copy over the transform, the local position and scale of everything from Zombie Jill's blood particle mount, just to make sure that it's in exactly the same position relative to the butcher that it was relative to Jill. So I'm going to select Jill's blood particle mount, copy the component, go down into our butcher's blood particle mount, and paste component values. You can see it was slightly misaligned. Okay, not bad. We've done the head now. What we need to do is we need to add those triggers or colliders to the arms. That's the thing that allows it to do damage to us when it's taking a swipe at us. So once again, we'll go to Zombie Jill. We'll go drill down into her left arm. I think it was a direct child of the left hand, was it? Oh no, this is actually on the left hand, so we will have to kind of set this up from scratch. I didn't realize that. Okay, so we need to add this sphere collider and an AI damage trigger to the left hand of our new bone hierarchy. So probably easy to set this up from scratch. I'm just going to remember the settings here. The radius was 0.18 and it was offset on the Y by 0.06. It was 1050 in left hand. Okay, so let's go to our butcher now, drill down into its left hand. Let's add a sphere collider, and let's also add a AI damage trigger. This is the left hand, so it needs to have the left hand name. Remember, this is what marries up with a parameter in the animator with exactly the same name. And I've already forgotten what all the settings were. So I'm going to go up and just take a look at these again. I might as well copy them over, hadn't I? So I'm going to select the left hand. I'm going to copy over the sphere collider settings, copy component, go down to my left hand, copy that over by choosing paste component values, and 0.06 0.18. I'm looking at the radius and the center offset of the hand. 0.06 0.18. So I think that's the actual collider isn't exactly the right place, so we don't have to do anything else to the sphere collider. All we have to do now is copy over the settings of the damage trigger, which is 1050 left hand, and in mine it's going to be 1050 left hand. And now we just have to do the same for the right hand as well. So we're going to choose the right hand, we're going to add component sphere collider and add component damage trigger. We'll select our left hand. We will copy this component and paste it into the right hand, paste component values. There you go. That makes sure that it's a trigger as well. If you're setting that up manually, remember these need to be triggers, not sort of basic colliders, okay? Otherwise, when the zombie hits us, it'll be kind of thrashing around and knocking us around the level. And also we need to copy over the right hand. This needs to be instead of left hand, and copy over the damage amount, which was 50. Let me just double check that. Okay, so when I press play now, our zombie should be completely set up and ready to go. It should be able to damage us as well. Let's just check that is correct. Okay, that's not working. Oh, I know why. Yeah, very important. These colliders, or the game objects that these colliders are on, need to be assigned to the AI trigger layer, not the AI body part layer. So let's set to AI trigger. That's why no collisions were happening. We'll just set it for that game object only. We need to do that for the left hand as well. Set it to AI trigger. We won't apply this to children, just the single game object. And then we need to drill down into the neck and in the head. And we need to find its child game object, which is the mouth trigger. And we need to set that. Oh, that's already set to AI trigger, of course, because I copied that over from the original Jill game object. Okay, this should work now. I believe we should see some blood on the screen when this puppy attacks me. Yeah, well, we're seeing some. Yes. Yeah, there you go. So now this is a fully functioning zombie. Okay, this has got kind of everything that Jill could do, but we're now using a different mesh. And in my case, because both of these are Mixamo characters, they actually are using, I think, the exact same bone system. So I didn't actually need to do any of this. I could have just swapped the meshes over and possibly swap the animation avatars over. I wanted to show you the long way around to do it, because I know that a lot of you are going to be using resources from various different vendors that won't share the same bone hierarchy. So this is how you do it. So we now have Zombie Jill, all of her properties sort of teleported and transported into our Zombie Butcher. So what we want to do now is change other characteristics so it doesn't behave exactly the same as Zombie Jill. Because you'll see at the moment, if I enable Zombie Jill, press play and then run around to have a look at them, they both kind of look like they're doing exactly the same thing. You see them? They're using the same running animations, they've got the same turn speeds, but you can see I do now at least have 2 zombies chasing me. So you can imagine we can apply that process to all of those Mixamo zombies that we downloaded and imported into our project. We have lots of different zombies walking around the level. And if you need to populate your level and you haven't got very many models, then of course another good thing to do is to use things like doctors or soldiers or policemen, because any institution that has a uniform basically means it has lots of people that look exactly the same without it being obvious in your game that, oh look, there's 300 zombies and they're all Jill. But you could have like 100 soldiers running at you, and that wouldn't necessarily look completely out of place. Okay, one other thing I need to do is select the Butcher's AI entity, and if you scroll down to the bottom where we added the feeding state, you'll notice we haven't yet connected it up to the blood mount that we put in its head. So let's do that now. I've drilled down into the Zombie Butcher's AI into its hips, and I'm going to drill all the way down the spine, down the neck, into the head, to where that blood particle mount is. I'm just going to drag and drop that over in the blood particle mount slot of the AI Zombie State Feeding 1 script on the Butcher's AI Entity game object. And at the moment both of these zombies are actually in the same place, so let me move the Butcher back. Okay, and just to remind you, at the moment if I press play and then I go and have a look at them, they both turn in almost synchronization. Okay, so let's look at one of the easiest ways that we can take 2 zombies or multiple zombies that use exactly the same animator controller and just give them different characteristics via the AI Zombie State machine so that they behave a little differently. As you can see, when we looked at them just now, they both turned exactly the same and they both used the same running animation, and that's because they both run in the same state. So to show you what I mean, if I drill down into the Butcher's AI entity game object and scroll down to the what am I looking for, the pursuit state, okay, you can see that just like Zombie Jill, it's been set to have a speed of 2, which triggers the zombie's running animation. But if I set that to 1, then although they're both using the exact same controller, what we're going to see is our Butcher now is incapable of running, and it will just walk towards you when it's pursuing you, whereas Zombie Jill will run at you. And we'll also do the same for the attack of our Butcher as well. Once again, the attack speed is set to 2. We'll just set that to 1. And although their turning is still going to be synchronized because they're using the same turn animations, you're going to see that when they do turn down, they are now behaving in very different ways. This zombie can only walk after us and attack us like so. Even with just that one small change, we have two zombies that actually look quite different, although admittedly when they turn in synchronization, you can see that they're using the same animation. And of course, this is more apparent because I've positioned them looking exactly the same way, facing in the same direction, and therefore they respond to the event in exactly the same way. But if I was going to take the AI Butcher and maybe rotate him around a little bit so he's facing that way, you'll notice now that they won't look quite the same. Now you can see Zombie Jill turning, but the Butcher's already facing the same way. So you definitely want to make sure that when you place your zombies in the scene, you change them around so they're all facing in different orientations at startup, so they don't look too synchronized when they're turning, if they are using the same controller. And here they are now both attacking me, and I'm in a world of pain. Shoot him in the head, shoot her in the head, shoot him in the head again, and he's gone down. You can see I've got quite a lot of blood on my screen from doing that. Okay, so I'm not going to show you now because it's kind of obvious, but one of the other things you can do if you've got zombies using the same basic animator controller is we can change all of these properties so that we could give one zombie a much more restricted or a much more wider field of view, so that if you have two zombies, even if they have the same animations and animator controller, one of them might react to you entering the periphery of its vision, whereas for the other zombie you might be outside of its field of view, so it wouldn't react in the same way. Another, of course, is to change the sight distance, so that if one zombie is more blind than another zombie, then even if both of them are facing you, only one zombie might react because the other may not see you. You may be outside of its sight range. What else? Of course, we want to change things like health. Of course, one of the things we could do is we could take the Butcher, or we could take Zombie Jill, and we could set their lower body damage so they start limping or crawling from the very start. And of course, if we change their intelligence, then we've seen how that can basically change the way that they seek left and right, how intelligently they seek left and right. In fact, if we take our Butcher and turn him back round to Zombie Jill's orientation or thereabouts, but put its intelligence right down to say something, I don't know, like 1 or something, we'll probably notice that when they start turning to seek towards me, they don't seek the same direction. You can see the other zombie did an unintelligent seek to the right because it didn't naturally take the shortest distance to find out where the sound was coming from. There it did, but the first time it didn't. So you're starting to randomize the seek directions a lot more when you do that. I'll put its intelligence back up to about midway for now. And of course, if we also change the satisfaction so that it's at 1 for when the level starts, then even if both these zombies walked past the same food source, only one of them would be interested in seeking towards that food source and going down and feeding on it. And of course, there's other little tweaks that we can do to make them behave slightly differently. We can change things like the turn on spot threshold so that one zombie is made to turn more accurately before it starts to drop into pursuit mode, whereas the other one might start out of pursuit mode much earlier during the turn on spot animation. We could also change the slurp speed on the attack state so that the zombie is less accurate, or it takes him a longer time to acquire the direct path to the target, so that if you had two zombies that were set up exactly the same in every other way, if they started running towards a moving target, as that target moved, one of the zombies would stay much more aligned, the one with the quicker slurp speed, whereas the other one would start to kind of arch out more as it reacquired the correct path. So that would make them look a little bit different as well. Okay, so we've seen what can be done to make them behave a little bit differently, or in fact quite a bit differently, without changing anything. But of course, where the real power comes in is when we start changing the animator controller that the zombie's using, which contains all of the motion fields. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill down into our project window, and I'm going to find where our animator controller is, our Omni Zombie 1 animator controller. I'm going to duplicate it by going to the edit menu and choosing duplicate, and I'm going to call this one, or Unity's automatically renamed it, Omni Zombie 2. And that's cool. This is going to be another zombie that's capable of all of the various things that our zombie can do. That's why I call it an Omni Zombie controller, because we may create down the line very particular and focused zombie controllers that can only really do very specific things. But the whole Omni naming convention is a way of me sort of letting myself know that this controller and this zombie can do things such as crawling, feeding, attacking, running, all the states that our zombie supports. So if we open up the Omni Zombie 2 controller, what we can do now is we can select all of the various states, such as the states on its base layer for idle, turn, walk, jog and sprint, and we can change the animations that they use. So all of the animation state machine logic, and indeed the zombie state machine logic, stays exactly the same, but the zombie looks completely different. So let's find some animations that we can use to prove this point. So let's find a new idle animation that we're going to use for our butcher. And if I single click on it, we can see that the motion field currently being used is called zombie idle alert. So in our project view, let's drill down into our animations window and let's go down into our idle animations. Like I said, the one we're using at the moment is this one here. That's what our zombie Jill was doing when she was idling. Let's change it to this one here. Or what's this one like here? Oh, that one's quite cool. I quite like that one. So in order to change this animation over, we literally just have to select the idle animation state, drill down into our animations folder again, into our idle folder, and we'll drag over zombie idle alert 3 and we'll change over the motion field. So why don't we now change the turn on left and turn on right animations that the zombie using our second controller is going to use when seeking left and right. So I'm going to drill down to my animations folder, into my turns folder, and just have a look at some of the ones that are available. Well, I have this one here called zombie limp turn 180 degree right. We have this one here called zombie limp turn 180 degree left. Well, that's just the same one, isn't it? We have this turn on spot here. We have a human-like turn on spot. Don't really like that one. We have a dazed 180 degree turn. That one's not too bad, but the one I really like is, I think, what's this one like? Is it this stiff turn on spot? That's not too bad. It's this one here I like because it reminds me, I've called it Romero turn on spot left because it reminds me of sort of Dawn of the Dead type zombie motion where it does this very laboured turnaround. You see that's the left one. So, and we've got a right one as well for that. So let's assign those to the left and right motion field. So I'm going to select the zombie turn left state in the base layer. Am I in the base layer? Oh, I'm not in the base layer. What an idiot. Okay. So I need to, I was doing this on the lower body layer. So what I need to do is I need to make that assignment from idle again. And I will copy over idle 3, which I think is the one we used. And then in zombie left, I'm going to copy over that Romero turn on spot left. And on my zombie right state, I'm going to copy over turn on spot. No, that's not, what am I doing? I'm dragging the controller over. I'm going to drag over turn on spot right, the Romero one again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the walk. Currently we're using this walk here. And what I'm going to do is change that for something much more laboured. Let's have a look what this one looks like. Oh, that's not that laboured. And I've got one here called Romero Walk. There you go. So it's really walking like a mummy from one of those old B movies. So let's put that as the walking motion field. It was in the locomotion folder inside my animations folder, and it's called Romero Walk. And we'll drag and copy that over there. For our second speed, let's see if we've got something. Now we could just use the same one and maybe speed it up a little bit if we haven't got anything that kind of suits it. But I think what I'm going to do is see if we've got anything that's a little bit faster. Well, that one might work, possibly. That's called Laboured Zombie Walk. We've got this one called Mummy Walk. Yeah, actually that one's better because it's very much like the Romero Walk, but it's just faster. So that will be this zombie's equivalent of a jog. So once again, I select the zombie jog state in our base layer. I choose the locomotion folder in my animations folder in my project view, and I drag over the Mummy Walk animation field. And finally, for the sprint, what I'll do is I will use that laboured locomotion one that we saw here, like so. Now, obviously another way that I could make it impossible for a zombie to walk or sprint or jog is to just have control of that by using the motion field. So for example, if we wanted a zombie that could only walk without changing the animator controller, we could literally just drag over the same walk motion into these two animation states, so it could never do anything other than that. So let's press play. Oh, I haven't assigned the animation controller to our butcher yet, so I need to select the butcher's AI entity game object, and in its animator component, it's currently using OmniZombie 1. I need to assign it to OmniZombie 2. If I press play now, you can see they're both turning very differently, they're both walking very differently. And if I try and shake them off a minute, because we didn't really get a chance to see the zombie turn there, did we? There you go. So there's a zombie, and you can see he's doing this laboured turn, and then when he sees me, he starts to walk. Now, admittedly, the root motion is not too good in that animation. That was one of the ones I cleaned up from the that big mocap library I downloaded from the asset store. So I think what I'll do actually is I will just choose the AI entity for a moment, and I'm just gonna see what the zombie walk looks like by giving this zombie an inability to run when it's in pursuit mode. So I'm going to set its speed to 1. I'm going to set its attack speed to 3. Okay, so because we never got the chance to see the running there. So there he is doing his laboured walk. If I could just get this zombie out of the way, he should start sort of sprinting towards me now. Yeah, not too bad. The thing is, it's only when he's like that he really starts to kind of sprint, when he's in attack range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pursuit mode. I'm going to set that to 3 as well. So I'm going to miss out the jog animation, and I'm just going to make sure that when we're not walking, we're doing a sprint. And remember, our sprint was this animation, which I think might look not really a sprint, but I think you'll know what I mean. Oh, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to turn off Omni Zombie Jill for this, because she's just really getting in the way. She's stealing the limelight somewhat. So there you go, there it is, moving around, and now he's... Oops. Well, as you can see, the problem I have there is that animation is not set to loop. So I'm going to need to fix that now. I remember that was called Laboured Zombie Walk, wasn't it? Yeah, so we're going to need to make sure that's a looping animation. So I need to select it and then choose loop time. So look, I'm just choosing that animation clip in my animation window, and in the inspector I'm choosing loop time like so. Let me just check that loop's okay. I might need to loop pose as well. Okay, no, I don't. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the sprint, I'm going to actually speed up the animation a little bit. Let's see if we can get away with 1.5. So it's going to make that animation happen, but slightly quicker, so it becomes more like a sprint. There you go. That's not too bad, is it? So that's a zombie that's clearly having trouble getting around. And if I shake him off, turn my light off, and stop running so that I don't alert him to my presence, hopefully, if I get around there, I can see him not facing me. There you go. He's coming around the corner now. He's still seeking for me. So there he is doing his bog standard walk. I shine the light on him. He goes into that sort of laboured turn and then starts kind of limping towards me. Okay, so what you've seen there, and don't get me wrong, these animations are not the best, okay, but I'm just showing you how differently you can make them behave by literally just using the same animator and just swapping over the motion fields. And you'd probably want to do the same for idols in the lower body range, and I don't know what turn we had for damaged. Oh, we're actually using that one anyway for our damaged turn, so that one should work just fine. What did we have walking for damaged? I can't remember. Yeah, now we might want to change that one over possibly, because our zombie is so laboured to begin with, that kind of is probably slightly more mobile than he is in his default state, or otherwise swap them around. Yeah, that might be okay. That might be okay. We'll leave them like that. I think hopefully you get the idea that we now have two completely different zombies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my FPS controller rig and just watch them from the scene view, so you can finally see what I'm playing at here. I'll turn Zombie Jill around that way like so, and I'll make sure that I'm not maximizing the game window, so we can just see what they're doing in the scene view and how different they look when they move around the level. So they're in idle there. They've both got two different idle poses. Zombie Jill is going to sort of start seeking around in a minute, hopefully. Yeah, there she is, and then she's going to sort of briskly sort of walk off, whereas the other guy's looking a lot more laboured. And there we have two zombies that are, for all intents and purposes, completely even though they're using the same animator controller layout with just different motion fields. And of course, one of the other things that you can do as well is in another controller you can change the attacks that are done. So a different zombie has different attacks. You can use different hits. I mean, I'm very limited to animations because at this point in time, and unfortunately this isn't going to be the same going into part 2 because I'm going to be using the real game assets then that I'm not able to give you because I had to buy them off the asset store. But in this video, while you're trying to get these basics into your head and build your AI system, it was important to me that you could follow along exactly with the assets that I'm using. So I was only able to use assets that I was able to give you. But if you go on the asset store or many other places, you'll find loads and loads and loads of different animations that are much better than these that you can pay for and really build up your animation library. So I'm going to finish off here and just say that we have several more zombies in our project, and as an exercise for you, I want you to take all of those remaining zombie models that you've imported and do the process that we've shown today to bring them into the level, to give them different controllers and animations, and so we can just have lots of zombies walking around our level. And when I come back in the next lesson, I'm going to have done that with some, so we're going to have more zombies than just the 2 I have. Now, I did say that this was going to round up our AI coverage. I was actually one video off because I've just decided at a very late edition, I'm going to add a very cool feature, and that is for a zombie to have a screaming ability. And what this will do is when the zombie sees you, when it's in an alerted state, rather than just start going to pursuit mode, there'll be a random chance, if the zombie has been configured in such a way, that instead of just running towards you, it will scream. And when it screams, it will emit a big sound emitter, which means all of the other zombies in that vicinity, even if they're not looking at you or facing away, will automatically register that audio aggravator, and they'll all stop what they're doing, stand up and look around towards that zombie. And of course, when they do that, there's a good chance they're going to see you as a visual threat. So pretty hairy, right? Imagine you're sneaking down a corridor, one zombie sees you, and then all of a sudden it just screams and goes, "Ah!" And then all the other zombies stop what they're doing and start charging at you as well. So that's what I've got planned. I have never implemented this before, so in between this lesson and the next lesson, I'm going to see how feasible that is and how well it works. And if it works well, that's what I'll be doing in the next lesson. And like I said, your task between now and the next lesson is to take all of these other models. You'll notice if we look in our project view, if you imported the same assets as me, I have these Mixamo characters. We've got things like the cop, we've got the Girl Scout, we've got Derek, who's Derek? I think he is he's the American cop, and Cop Zombie is the British cop. We've already done Mortimer, but of course you could do several Mortimers with different animator controllers. We've got this one here, I don't even know what that is. We haven't set up some of these, so like for example, you can see that Survivor character there, you can see there's a bit of transparency problems going on because I think he's been assigned by default a transparent material by Unity, so you need to sort that out, just as we did in the early lessons. We got this guy, don't know if any of you ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer back in the day, but there was an episode, it was very good, called The Three Gentlemen, and he looks very much like one of the Three Gentlemen. So yeah, take all of these zombies and put them in your level, get them all walking around. And of course, another thing that I need to remind you just before you go is that they don't need to all follow the same waypoint patterns or even the same waypoint networks. Just to remind you, if we go to Zombie Jill, for example, and draw down into her AI entity game object and look down at her patrol state, we are reminded that, where is her patrol state? I'm having a bit of trouble seeing. Oh, there it is. Actually, it's not her patrol state, sorry. It's her AI zombie state machine. You'll see that she's been assigned Waypoint Network 1. But we also created another network, this one here. And we could assign that to Zombie Jill instead. So they would both be following different waypoint networks. And you can create as many waypoint networks as you want. Furthermore, even if we leave Zombie Jill on the same waypoint network, what we also have the ability to do is change the way that the waypoints are selected from the network. So if I go to the patrol state, where is it? Or is it in the zombie state machine again? Yeah, there you go. At the moment, we haven't got random patrol ticked, so that means that the zombies are going to follow the waypoints in order. But if on Zombie Jill, I choose random patrol, then she's just going to choose a different waypoint each time. Now, knowing my luck, if I press play now, they'll both head towards the same waypoint just out of sheer fluke. But let's see what happens. Well, what would you know? Okay, so let's I guess most of the waypoints are over that side of the level anyway, so they end up having to walk around the bus to get there anyway. Of course, another thing that is very important is that all of your zombies are not going to start off in the same place as well. So just by putting them in different positions, different orientations, they're all going to be moving at different times, different speeds, following different waypoint networks, and also following different waypoints on that waypoint network if you randomize their waypoint patrols. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye now.